you could build out any number of AI native workflows in accounting, but if you haven't solved the fundamental, where are the data pipelines? What data is available? Is it accurate? Is there a single source of truth? You won't be able to actually automate and anything in earnest and solve those real problems.
From Numeric, this is Incoming Statements, the podcast built for forward-thinking accounting pros. Join Anthony Alvernaz, Numeric's co-founder and chief product officer, as he talks with accounting leaders about what practices and philosophies are defining modern financial operations. So grab your coffee, throw on some headphones, and let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Incoming Statements. My name is Sam Isaac, and our guest today is Anthony Alvernaz. And on top of being the host of this podcast, he is also co-founder and CPO of Numeric. Is it appropriate for me to welcome you to your own podcast?
I think it's highly appropriate. Yes, it is. So thank you. I will take the welcome.
So what got you into art collection? You're a person who is fascinated by art, by aesthetic, and it is frankly not something that I see much in my peers, and I'm fascinated to know, how'd you get into art collection?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's not a story I've ever thought of in terms of what's the origin of being interested in collecting art. I think it, to zoom out a little bit, manifests in the collection of different objects as much as anything. And that's probably where it started. If I were to really on the fly here think critically of where did the obsession with art come from and the obsession of collecting, it definitely was, as a child, I recall any interesting experience that I had somewhere, whether it was with family, with friends, something that felt new or different. I always wanted some keepsake from those moments. And so things as silly as breaking off a piece of lava rock in the Azores as a child at a local swimming hole, or taking something that was a prop in some play that I went to and had the ability to sneak somewhere in something. These sort of the keepsakes that no one will miss that are a reminder. It's something that I think has been very fundamental if I were to think really far back is into childhood. But I think the sort of notion of fine art and the interest in collecting fine art, I think that really unfolded in many ways. It might sound kind of contrived, but in many ways, Apple as a computing company, really fundamentally leaning into aesthetic, was really the first foray into the thought process behind when someone is really obsessed with the output of a product. What does it look like to be that obsessed, and what can you make, and being interested in sort of collecting the output of people's obsessions. And so, I remember plenty of times walking through museums as a child, looking at old masters and awing at the sort of level of thought and effort that went into them. But I don't think it was actually until first iPod, really, that 2001, that I really, for some reason, it's sort of connected at a deeper level that, wow, there's a degree of obsession here that is interesting to appreciate and to collect. And I think it was around then I started taking art more seriously.
There's two themes that you mentioned that I'd love to understand more. On the one hand, there is sort of like the deeply personal of what is the context, what is the feeling that you are trying to memorialize in the object, whether it's an iPod, or whether it's an oil on canvas. And then on the other hand, there is an appreciation for the artist or the creator and sort of memorializing not just your own experience, but their obsession and the fruits of their labor. And I'd love to sort of understand sort of whether you see those as two branches of the same part of your brain, or whether you see those as distinct.
Yeah, I think I see those as distinct. I don't often think of both in the same context, and when that context overlaps, I think that's where you get really interesting projects for one to work on or to be excited about. But yeah, I would say distinct.
Yeah. And would you say that your taste in art or the fine arts has reflected or if at all impacted your taste as a product leader?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from day zero to every day, and I think it changes constantly. If I were to think back on different pieces of art that I've either collected or made over time, they are often a reflection of state of mind. at a really macro level. And I think the last couple of years have been, or the last few years certainly, as we've been on the journey of Numeric, have been an absolute roller coaster, and really the best way. And in fact, you wouldn't call a great ride if there weren't moments that were terrifying, or moments where you wish you weren't sat in that seat with the straps around you. And so, yes, it would be the short answer.
I think one thing that you mentioned is sort of this early obsession with Apple and the first iPod. I'd love to understand when you were a child, because as the audience may not know, you grew up not only in Portugal, but also in the Bay Area. What's sort of your earliest interaction or with Apple, the brand, and whether you sort of have any real life experience in?
There are some stories I think you may be privy to, Sam, that you might be alluding to there. Earliest experience with Apple as a company, it would have been, earliest that I would say is of note. It would have been acquiring my first MacBook, which was the white plastic plastic MacBooks that were this sort of cornerstone with the light up logo. So, and really, I think for the first time understanding what it can mean to care about UI and care about UX, the sort of Mac OS experience being, OS 10 being this first fundamental thing that cares about, what it means to interface with a computer, and what it means to say, sure, we can take this aqua theme to our UI and be a little bit playful with it, and it will resonate. And I think that probably being one of the most early real examples of experiencing Apple, leaning in on the significance of UI and thinking about it.
Do you think that it's mostly a matter of utility, or is it mostly a matter of feeling? The feeling that you get using the product, as opposed to what is sort of easily digestible in a product marketing blog?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it starts with feeling, and that's probably the most important thing that, not to continue to use Apple as an example, but I think a company like that has really gotten right time and time again, is you have to start with feeling, and not that utility is secondary, but you have to hook someone in a certain way, and also build something in a way that folks are excited to show up and be there and use it. And so the utility, in many ways, this is a bit of a contrived way of saying that function follows form. But I do believe that to be true with products that you spend a lot of time in.
Yeah. I think that it is very interesting and fascinating to hear you say this, because you are obviously someone who cares deeply about taste, and you someone who thinks deeply about what it means to build great product. And I would say that is not always what one can say about the tools that accountants turn to for their day-to-day life. So as you sort of think about starting Numeric and deciding to make this company and lead product in this subject matter, what drew you to, as a man of taste, what drew you to an industry that does not always sort of reflect that?
Well, I will start with a disagreement, which is I do think the world of finance and accounting is full of great taste, and in many ways it's full of some of the most refined example of taste, which is the aspect of precision that has to be true for something to exist, and the sort of notion of accuracy being one facet downstream of taste. And yes, you can lean too far into that with blinders on to other aspects. But I would say in that way, philosophically, for me, finance and accounting is very emblematic of a very precise facet of taste. And I do think there are some great builders who are really starting to take it seriously, and it's a really exciting thing to see. But absolutely, one of the motivators when we sought out to build Numeric was the fact that we could use some degree of taste and design as a differentiator in a space where finance and accounting folks are excellent, wonderful people who spend a lot of time in the tools that they use, and it is a damn shame when those tools are actively trying to make it harder, seemingly, for you to do what you're trying to do. So it was really the opportunity to do something that sits in this general workflow that is so pervasive to someone's day, and hopefully make their day a little bit nicer.
Before we sort of dive into the accounting and product, because I think there is a lot to unpack and understand there, your take on why accounting has historically been a last mover cohort of folks, learnings around what has been either most counterintuitive for building as for accountants as users. I want to back up to sort of the founding story of Numeric because one, I've never heard the story from your perspective, and two, I think it's sort of critical to understand where you're coming, what context you're coming to this problem with. So how did you meet Andrew and Parker initially?
Yeah. So the three of us all had the pleasure of going to school together. We didn't spend a ton of time together with one another on campus, but we were aware of each other. Parker and I had a shared professor who we both deeply love and appreciate, and
what's his name?
Tony Brown, and had met at a dinner that Tony hosted, a Giving Circle dinner, which he would often bring together local nonprofits in Durham, North Carolina, and have them all give a pitch about the organization that they represent, and then folks go around with coins and leave coins in a cup, and you select, amongst the crop of folks who spent, I don't know, a couple $100 to be there, which select number will get the pool of money from those at the table. And so it's a really phenomenal concept, something I think be fun for us to figure out how to organize a similar thing here. But in any case, neither here nor there. So I had the chance to meet with Parker. We sat next to each other at a dinner in undergrad, and we then all worked together at the same startup after college. And so we were at our first job, figuring out what it meant to be in the working world. And it was a very, very atraditional environment in terms of working out of a large house in Rockridge primarily. And it was definitely a lot of fun, and we certainly learned a lot. And I sort of joke, we really went to war together in various ways, and you learn a lot about a person and what it would mean to work with them. That it's pretty fundamental when deciding to start a company together. Is I think I could go to war with this person time and time again, both from an interpersonal standpoint, from a environmental context, the things you don't or can't control. There's a high amount of trust involved in that, and respect for one's competencies and work ethic. And so we gained a lot of that in those years at that startup. And then
how large was the startup when you joined?
We were some of the earliest FTEs. The company was just a small group of about 5. So
my goodness, wow.
Yeah, we were really in on the
Some
on
people
the ground
call
floor.
startups, 50 people
No,
20
no.
people. This is
No.
truly
The early stage is 0 to 1 truly in FTE count. Yeah.
That's incredible. And the three of you all attended Duke undergrad together. And was it the type of thing where some alumni came to town and recruited from the graduating class to find folks to work?
Yeah.
How did sort of fortune smile on the three of you, I guess?
No, it's exactly what it was. That same professor also ran a really wonderful weekend where he'd bring alumni back to campus and would get paired off with folks and talk about what they were doing. And the founder of this company was about to embark on this new journey, and so the timing really aligned, and our interest areas were very overlapping, and so it made a lot of sense.
What were those interests?
Well, from the perspective of what the company was building, the idea of building a product in a market that's underserved, the idea of doing something net new, 0 to 1 was very exciting for both of us. Parker had more of a finance background at the time in terms of what he studied, and economics being one of his degrees. I had studied an amalgamation of things that lent itself to a product role sounding
What
very
were those things?
I studied public policy, computer science, and visual arts.
Oh my gosh.
And so
fullest left brain to right brain mix.
I say it kept me sane, truly. I was sort of did the things I found interesting.
Three majors kept you sane?
Yeah, well, actually, Duke does not allow for a proper triple major, so it would have been 3, but it was only 2 and a minor. But yeah,
and
of course, as I say that, someone will note. In fact, they do offer triple majors if all 3 are STEM. I think it's the only scenario I'm aware of where the engineering school will make it happen. And those folks are far, 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 far smarter than I could ever hope to be.
Another criminal underinvestment into the arts.
Maybe. That school does it well.
I'm sorry. We need to dive in here. You were studying computer science, public policy, and the fine arts. At what point in your college career did you decide that these are the degrees that I wanted to pursue? Or was it a matter of these are my interests and I'm in my first semester and I realized that I'm, 1 credit away from pulling off this hat trick?
Yeah, it's the truest answer would be Duke pairs you off with an advisor at some point, I believe, in your sophomore year, and they tell you, all right, we have to really figure out what are you trying to leave here with, and when is that going to happen? And I went into college expecting to do some form of computer science. Originally thought perhaps electrical engineering and computer science. A lot of friends that did the EECS program. Very rigid to do that program and also explore, and really hard not to be just utterly enamored by the level of opportunity, level of folks really obsessed with very different facets of higher ed, and just the sort of unrelenting curiosity to want to go explore different corners of the campus really brought me to those three different corners, all being things that just I'm generally very interested in. And so it was that alignment of this doesn't feel like work most of the time that made that the combination.
And it sounds like that was very much self-motivated as opposed to, either consulting with very pragmatic parents or sort of having influence from professors or individuals. I guess, did you have any conversations with either your folks or friends to sort of help calibrate on what you were interested in?
Yeah, well, certainly from a home perspective, the whole concept was very new to my folks. They did not go to college. So for them, the whole idea that I would even decide to go to college and not jump straight into working on something was what they were encouraging. And so there was not much input there.
And they're originally from Portugal.
They are, yeah. And from a faculty standpoint, what I generally found was that whomever represented one of those three departments was excited about encouraging doing more of that department, with the exception of the public policy school, which did have a keen interest in encouraging computer science and public policy. There had historically never been a graduate who had done both of those. And of course, the CS program at the time went from one of the least popular majors to one of the most popular majors, even in my 4-year tenure. And so, we were definitely, I was definitely exploring what I found interesting, and it was neither encouraged nor discouraged overall. It was possible.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm just very, very, very impressed for someone who has such a wide array of interests that you're, I don't know, it seems like Numeric in many ways is the perfect way to explore both sides of your brain. You have, this deeply aesthetic and creative endeavor on designing a product and designing a totally new way of doing things. And then you also have this very rigid rule-based system where you're designing things for accountant. I have to admit that the way that I described you to my wife after our first conversation was a refreshingly original mix of old and new world interests. That is written down right here from a text message that I sent to Julia.
I take that with appreciation. That's how I think about what makes the world interesting. So I'll take that.
So after meeting Andrew and Parker at your first startup, you did not immediately jump into starting a company. There was a stop at BlackRock in between. So how was that experience?
It was amazing. The sort of short-term quip on it, or the short quip of it, as I have lots of conversations with candidates who always want to know, what is the founding story? What is your story? Is the going from a 16-person org to a 16,000-person org, and wanting the context of both as part of the journey. And it was phenomenal. It was an organization that values some of the same degree of precision, serves the same, in many ways, some of the same clients that we get to work with today, and approaches from an EPD perspective the process of building product, obviously on timelines that are longer, but with a bar for quality and intensity that was certainly appreciable.
I'm not sure that people appreciate the degree of EPD investment that a company like BlackRock does, because prior to having friends who were portfolio managers and used a lot of the products that I expect you were designing, I always viewed it as sort of the guy with the most poker chips at the poker table. But I think that really undersells the degree to which BlackRock is a technology company in addition to being an asset manager.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't make asset management decisions in a black box, and there are some incredibly talented folks who are able to put pen to paper and decide what feels like a good decision or not. But the vast majority of it comes from lots of intense engineering and a sales team that is armed with a tremendous amount of tools to help look and evaluate at what their clients' spread of individual assets are, and help them understand what ETFs can I supplant some of these individual ownerships with, and how does that actually help long-term stability of my portfolio. And an incredibly engineering-centric organization for sure.
What were the types of problems that you were asked to solve, or what was the product that you were tasked with helping to build?
Yeah, so inside of the iShares division, the subset of ETFs that BlackRock
Folks know it from their 401k, I bet.
They know it from the 401k, very likely. Obviously, a set of funds also, which in the post-pandemic boom had some incredible inflows, and was a particularly exciting time to be there and watch some of those numbers week over week and some of our internal reporting take up. But was responsible for a product that effectively helps folks understand how do we get from a salesperson standpoint, how do we get the right portfolio built for our client? How do we get them to the advisor center, and which helps them break down those individual equities and recommend ETFs that BlackRock has that would be a good suit for their portfolio.
Totally. And so you have on the one hand this experience of truly 0 to 1. You are in a house in Rockridge, and then you transition to being a highly efficient cog in this massive machine with a clear mandate of what you need to do, but it is narrow in scope relative to the full breadth of the organization. And then there's a crux moment where you decide to start a company. So before we get into sort of, what conversations led to Numeric, what were the patterns or anti-patterns that you took from those experiences into the company that you wanted to found?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think from a pattern standpoint, certainly understanding, I would make the joke, which is that you can define patterns that you're excited about through anti-patterns, but really cast them for yourself as patterns. And so I'll probably speak mostly to patterns here, some of which came from anti-patterns. I would say building product in a way where you've maintained or are able to maintain a relentless closeness to your user being one. Really getting to understand the people that are using the thing that you're building and being excited about that. Having enough baseline understanding about what their day looks like that you feel like you can actually appropriately build for them. I mean, in some ways, it's the greatest honor to get to build something for someone else without necessarily being them. You're not them. You're not doing their job day in and day out. You can only understand as much of the problem as you can glean from what they say and what you can observe. But that pattern being do that. Be very close to those folks and make sure you understand what they say and do. So I would call that a key pattern. I think another key pattern around the folks you choose to work with and having the right balance of time in work and out of work to maintain those relationships and keep them really healthy and keep them very candid and making sure there's enough opportunity for that candor to make its right way in the mix being exceptionally important across the board. And we're really off the cuff here. I think I'd also say as a pattern, trying to embrace anti-pattern, which is to say, trying to look at what you are building and really look at what else is out there, and in building it, figure out, well, what will be better about this? What will be different about this? How are we going to approach this in a way that is going to be better? Because at the end of the day, with digital product, there's incredible room to innovate. There's also incredible room to just be copied, or incredible room to not establish a better way of working and a better way of doing something. And that is a constant battle, and the tension between iteration on the incremental and long-term vision that helps to fundamentally establish what is going to really be a step function improvement in a workflow. And so I would say that pattern of being willing to embrace, what might feel like a diversion.
It is hard enough to tear a hole in the world and make people care about your new thing, and incrementality just will not cut it at the end of the day.
It won't, and yet you need so much of it, and it is the most delicate balance, but absolutely.
All right, so you, Andrew, and Parker decide to do an impossibly psychotic thing and found a company. What was that conversation like? It's 2020.
Yeah, the conversation was, let's go see if there's a there.
Sure.
A favorite phrase of Parker's, and or was at the time. It's been memorialized. and at the time, for a bit more context, Parker was the head of finance at a company building out an accounting function for the first time, went through a financial audit for the very first time without knowing what a financial audit meant. And so, among Parker's many, many skills, learning something new very quickly, certainly one of them. And so he was sort of drinking from the fire hose of all things accounting and finance, and responsible for landing a plane that he parachuted into that was amidst landing. That being that first audit. And Andrew's working at Segment, building out what ended up being a significant product pre their acquisition called Personas that he was engineering. And I was at BlackRock, and at BlackRock doing product work. When you tell folks you're a product manager at BlackRock, they at first get really wide-eyed and say, holy crap, what product did you bring to market? Them thinking a financial instrument of which you're then you tell them digital product, and in fact, the monk here at BlackRock is digital product manager for that reason, because internally the distinction is important. But nonetheless, I spend most of my days looking at tools like Figma, which, of course, a day in and day out product that we still use today here at Numeric, but intersected with a lot of spreadsheets as well, and definitely had a little bit of nausea and anxiety over the spreadsheet, which, not to disparage spreadsheets, and we won't get into that necessarily in too much detail, but point is, we were all looking at different parts of, in some ways, the problem we're still solving today. Parker, of course, as an SME, building out a team for that problem for the very first time. So to get back to your question, how did that conversation go? How did we start this? Parker was really excited to share a spreadsheet that he had built to manage some of his month-end close tasks. And Andrew and I looked at that and thought, "Holy crap, this is hilarious. This is I mean, hilarious in the sense that you've really over-engineered a spreadsheet. Like, you've built a product in your spreadsheet."
What was a feature that really stood out, where it's less, values in a cell and more, wow, there's like some real thought into what's under the hood to power this?
Yeah, it was. There were two that still stand out to this day. One was this notion of having all these different spreadsheets, which themselves have balances that represent a subledger's balance. And this beautiful index, it probably sounds very basic to those who really know Excel, but this beautiful index sheet that reflected on a real-time basis what that ending balance was and compared it against the data coming from zero. And so dumping in an export from zero, the GL he was using at the time, and letting you compare all these different sheets ending subledger balances. It's now a feature in our product. It's still to this day for workflows that still rely on spreadsheet work papers. But it was a reconciliation tool that was a full product.
But 12 downloaded CSVs, 18 copy pastes, accidentally grabbing it from V6 final, no, right. Actually this one later, you have yourself a reconciliation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So not, yes, and. But I did what I know best, which is, or knew best at the time in this context, which was, let's put pen to paper, let's put pixel to Figma, let's build some prototypes that reflect a bigger version of this thing. And let's go schedule time to get in front of folks and show them this and see if they're excited by it. And this was the pandemic. It was relatively easy to send cold emails, cold LinkedIn messages, cold Slack DMs and Slack groups to get 15 minutes on someone's calendar and show them a product. And so we very much benefit from that sort of work from home, pandemic, Zoom culture, and getting tons of feedback on an early prototype. And it really snowballed from the asking folks what they would pay for a thing and looking at that thing and thinking, well, we could build this. We could do this pretty quickly. And so let's do it. So those were the early days.
And how much time was there between sort of brainstorming this aha moment of, oh my goodness, Parker, that is a way overcomplicated spreadsheet, and software is actually a good tool for the job that you're trying to build, into this is the thing for our creative energies, for what we want to do for this company. This is the idea that we want to pursue. How long were you in the wilderness, let's say?
I would say we're still in the wilderness. I don't think you ever really get out of the wilderness, I think, and you have to embrace that and be motivated by some amount of both the forest and the trees. But I think we're talking order of weeks, not months in many ways, which is to say, again, in that world of iteration, putting together prototypes, getting in front of multiple folks a week, doing this nights and weekends and being excited about it being all that you're doing nights and weekends. And it was the pandemic. Yeah, you had nights and weekends to go kick the tires on something. But I would say the early days felt very fast, and it felt like we were learning a lot very quickly, and the conviction only grew week over week.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but why is there not a satisfactory incumbent solution to this problem? Every company needs to close its book. An audit is a prerequisite for every company of material size. In our industry, you can't really progress past Series C unless you are getting your audit together.
Yeah.
Why is there not a satisfactory incumbent solution?
It's an exceptionally hard problem. And to be clear, I don't think it's a problem we've yet solved. It is a problem that we exist to continue working towards solving. And we have some very exciting line of sight and some ideas that we're excited to make a fundamental part of our next chapter that we won't spend too much time talking about today. But it's a damn hard problem. It is a problem that involves a combination of organizing a large group of stakeholders around data sources that are not properly connected, that in some ways, in some facet, are impossible to properly connect, as there will always be a bank connection that fails somewhere upstream when you're pulling data from so many different banks. There will always be someone who decides to take a direct feed and bring it into a spreadsheet and make some adjustment to a value. And so to that end, there are some cultural aspects as well that require a shift in mindset to agree, for lack of a better word, to run a process a certain way for the sake of being able to arrive at a higher degree of accuracy, a higher degree of automation. All of that's very hard. Some of it takes general time for the world to move in a certain direction and for some things to be possible that weren't before. And others just take a tremendous amount of time and energy to really build. And I think as is the case with any software product, at a certain point you reach a certain critical mass where it becomes really hard to reinvent yourself, or really hard to take the problem that you were trying to solve and very honestly say that you haven't properly solved it, and you have to keep building and be willing to take that step back on a recurring basis. And that's been very fundamental to our product development process, is always being willing to sort of push the reset button on, are we being academically honest enough in this situation? What would make this better? What do we need to do? And to that end, we have lots to build.
Yeah, you're not kidding. But I think that to unknot what you are talking about, because you mentioned some unique challenges to accounting, because you hear rule-based system and you think, man, that sure sounds like a great thing for software to be able to jump into. But you have a situation where you are dealing with multiple different stakeholders, which makes uniformity of process nearly impossible to maintain at scale. On top of that, you have a financial ecosystem that is a rat's nest of different shapes of data that makes standardization uniquely challenging.
Right.
And not only forcing things into the correct debits and credits so that everything ticks and ties by the end of the month, but then also having an infrastructure that allows you to understand, not just what this cell in the spreadsheet, not just what this tree looks like, but the forest of the picture of your business, and making that data actionable in a real way. As you sort of think about parsing those challenges, was there an aha moment of sort of which of those factors has really driven this most recent, or at least product iteration at Numeric to date?
That's a tough question. I would say there are many aha moments that don't feel like aha moments until you've pulled the thread enough to have them then feel like aha moments. And then as the thread further unravels, you might discover that wasn't an aha moment. And it does require a different framework, a different degree of control to a process to make work, a different whatever it might be. I would say, in terms of where we are right now, in terms of notable aha moments, I think building a product that folks are very excited to live in, to work in, and that mattering to people. I mean, there's always that fear if you're investing at all in how a product looks and feels in that. So to go back to some of what we're talking about on the onset of this sit-down conversation, that the idea of saying form matters, not over function, of course, not really in practice, but in terms of it being a hook and it being something that is a way of framing a build, framing an approach, there's always a risk that that's completely not true. And I think anyone who spends any time really designing something feels that way frequently. And that's a healthy tension to some extent. But that was a bit of an aha moment. People really care. Accountants love something that's well designed, and they love something that is a joy to work with and has rounded some of the sharp corners. So that was a bit of an aha moment. From a more technical standpoint, another tremendous unlock for us as a business from a growth standpoint, as a product from a depth of complexity and significance of the types of pain points that we can solve. I would say that just warehousing more financial data for folks was another big aha moment. A weekend project of Beals to build a NetSuite integration that pulled in not just summative trial balance data, but also underlying transaction lines was a significant product step for us that really resonated with folks in a way that we didn't quite fully anticipate.
What do you think drove that resonance?
I think it just to get back to just what folks in finance and accounting really care about. It is precision. It is being able to tell a story that has a through line to auditability and traceability, and the more information you can bring into one system, the better. And so the ability for folks to reconcile an account and then drill down and see every single journal that is there, the ability to have a reconciliation reset when a new journal is posted and be told what that journal is, the sort of availability and accuracy both proving true. And in some ways, not to disparage any other products, but folks enjoy being in our system. And so the less time they have to spend in some of these other solutions, some of these other systems of record, that's a consistent piece of feedback that we get today still.
It does seem to me that for my background is not in accounting, but instead in FP&A, and I will say that for so many systems of record, they are where the data is stored, but they are not where the work is done. And it seems like increasingly, frankly, as I have come up to speed in understanding not just how to use Numeric, but how to close our books as the one who is responsible for that at our company each month. It is rather refreshing to finally have a finance tool where the work is happening in the same place as the data is being consumed.
Yeah. I love to hear that. That is the dream.
As I have joked to you in the past, I am your number one internal power user and number one most annoying piece of feedback.
Nonsense. It is what gets our internal team so excited to be collecting your feedback when as we're testing new things.
So I think one thing that I deeply appreciated about my first conversation with you and my first conversation with Andrew is I was considering startups, and thematically AI felt like the right place to be, and both of you caught me. And you said, listen, this is an exciting tool. LLMs are an incredible innovation. They are a multifaceted and very useful tool in our toolkit, but ultimately the business is in service of accountants, finance teams, and their challenges. Break down the types of problems that you see as being uniquely suited for large language models, knowing that is a major technology wave that we are hard at work incorporating into the product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we take a step back, they're a remarkable thing. I mean, it is an insane science fiction moment that is worth checking in on and really resonating on time and time again of, we have computers that we can talk to, and generally speaking, they know what we're saying, and it's a matter of arming those computers with the right tools, or those models with the right tools to actually get work that has a need for determinism done, at least today. I mean, there are labs working on how you get more deterministic output from fully inference-based models, and that may come. Even if it does, it's a question of if that's the most efficient way to solve a deterministic problem. That's neither here nor there. The point is, I think it's remarkable how we can talk to a computer. A computer can generate things. They are coherent and in many ways above average. And that is a remarkable thing. I think when we think about what large language models are very good at, they are language-based tasks. They are summarization of content to some extent, especially with reasoning capability, spotting patterns and helping analyze something in a way that can be really hard to write an algorithm for. And that is a remarkable thing. I think the multimodality is also nothing short of science fiction and rather shocking. The image and text generation that we're getting, the voice generation that we're getting. This is the part where we tell folks this is an AI-generated podcast, and these are all thank you, 11 Labs. No, all of that is really remarkable. And LLMs are very well suited for that. And as the reasoning models get better, kind of what I'm alluding to, the ability for models to decide amongst a library of tools, what tool should I use to get this job done, because they understand what the job is also a very high accuracy thing that they're good at. So a lot.
And what would you say, just sort of thinking about the surface area that Numeric supports, where do you find yourself picking up the large language model tool to help provide value to our users?
Yeah, I mean, in our system today, we very much think about even the question of what does it mean to call oneself AI native or agentic in a world where determinism is so important. And AI as an interface is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about, spend a lot of time investing in. How do you take a layer that is how you interact with the computer and empower the computer to make the right decisions by picking a subset of tools that you have built that have deterministic outcome to them, that are auditable? And that's where we feel the highest leverage is gained today.
How does that come to life? Is it reading an invoice? Is it thinking about the type of capitalization that we might do for a particular cost? Mm-hmm. What does that actually mean? Nuts and bolts of an accountant's job.
Yeah, absolutely. What it actually means is giving an interface to take a look at a large subset of data and summarize that data. It's useful in a lot of different places. It's useful if you are trying to get an executive summary of hundreds of flux analysis explanations that you wrote or the system may have helped you write. It's useful for taking a look at individual tasks and summarizing the large set of activity that's occurred on a task, comments, review notes, back and forth audit trail, really helping folks understand, shortening the time to answering a question of what happened, I would say is a very succinct way of describing it. But it also manifests in how you make systems easier to use. And when I say AI as an interface, that's a big part of it. One concrete example that folks will start to see roll out in our product, we obviously have a significant investment in financial reporting. You can build an exceptional set of GAAP and non-GAAP financials in Numeric. You can add metric rows that perform any set of derived calculations on custom groups that you build that is very flexible. It's a Swiss Army knife to build a report, the tools that you have at bay. That can be daunting. There are a lot of fields, and we have a wonderful solutions team of former auditors and accountants who spend a lot of great time with our customers helping them do that. But there's a little bit of that, how do you ensure everyone is fully empowered to make the most out of your system? And so chat-based interfaces is what I'm getting at here. Chat-based interfaces are a really phenomenal way for someone to provide an example of what they're trying to get at, either a spreadsheet or a screenshot, or describe the sort of custom groupings that they're looking to get and have a system fundamentally generate that. The other big aspect of language models in our system, of AI in our system, is in that flux analysis process, the workflows that folks do month over month to explain what happened, where a feature we brought to market all the way back when GPT-3 was the hot new thing, which feels like a decade ago. I think that was a year, 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. And what we have done for the longest time is summarize all of your underlying transactions from your GL, those that live in our data warehouse. And what we've launched this month, we're very excited about, is the ability to further enrich that with other data sources. And so take something like an account for headcount spend or employee expenses, bringing in not just the underlying GL transactions, what's for most, certainly folks listening to this probably very familiar, is maybe 2 summative journal entries coming from another system, and being able to provide an export from Rippling and have it enrich with all the details of who was hired, is incredibly powerful. And it starts to get back to how do we as a system truly help folks automate the entirety of a workflow, not 30% of it, and that's a fundamental dream.
So to take flux analysis as an example, I remember back all the way back in 2023 when people would say you need to check ChatGPT for hallucinations before you copy and paste it. How have you seen accountants specifically, their willingness to trust the output from a large language model? And how do you expect the Overton window to move in the future?
It's a dangerous question. I think some controllers and CFOs in particular might be aghast at the thought that a staff accountant on their team might take an output and blindly accept it as fact. And in many ways, you can't stop that without introducing so much friction that it's not a feature at all. And so that does happen, that will happen. And to that end, we see the bar very wildly by person, and often by what their background is, and then have they found themselves in a sticky situation with inaccurate information at some point in their career yet, or not. And so To that end, this is where a combination of obviously model improvement, hallucination, general incidence of hallucination decreasing as these things improve, being very important, but also building systems where you are removing from the equation the possibility for a hallucination as much as is possible. And of course, all outputs should be double checked and read by folks, and that's a fundamental part of how we think about any of this work. But the short answer is it's highly variable.
Depending on the organization, depending
Yeah.
on the industry, I can certainly understand that.
Yeah.
I do think that it presents a unique challenge, certainly relative to, let's say, a consumer app, where the cost of inaccuracy is a funny meme or screenshot on the internet, whereas the cost of inaccuracy for an accounting company is a major restatement of your financials, as an example.
Right.
How there is a tension and a push from our users for more faster, more automated, while at the same time we are obligated to build a system that ensures that the minimum bar for accuracy is as close to 100% as is possible. So how do you, as the product leader, balance those two tensions?
Yeah, and I would actually start by presenting the framework, which is that in many accounting decisions, there is a trade-off between speed and accuracy. This is a phrase that Corey Doerman from Palantir originally is, who we worked with originally when she had just left Palantir, has coined, and I will provide her the attribution. It's not a phrase that I've naturally observed myself in finance and accounting.
Only speed for you.
Only I would say lean far more in the only accuracy and then many ways. It's like if you could make it accurate and make it beautiful, you have a great thing.
Sure.
But that's just not true in workflows that are very time bound, right? The month end close is a time crunch. You have to get things done. You are blocking other workflows downstream. It's different. And so I would say generally folks deal with that as a trade-off. I would say from a product standpoint, we prioritize accuracy primarily, which is to say we prioritize building product that is traceable, that gives folks an audit trail. If you produce something, think from an AI standpoint, that you can't reproduce deterministically, if a fully inference-based agentic box, it is a demo. It is not a feature. It is not something that an auditor will accept. And so, how do you set that bar at, what could I share as part of my intern testing period? What could I share in the annual audit that will work the same way every time? The math will check out. And in some ways, it's funny to hear horror stories of EY looking at someone's formula and the formula broke, and now they don't know how those 30 cents and it was immaterial, so it didn't matter, but it was really frustrating. Or worse off, it was material, it was millions in an account that shouldn't have movement in that size. And it all comes back to traceability, right? How can you track this formula? So when we think about AI in the product, it's about how are we still exposing the underlying data points, exposing the logic that was applied, and exposing all the source material such that you get there.
So it sounds like, when I sort of take your analogy to its logical conclusion, there is a non-deterministic interface, and the interface is a switchboard into a series of deterministic processes based on the context that you provide it, that given this action, I am then going to route it to the lease accounting process so that it can be automated, which sounds very, very different than knowing how to book a debit and credit. So before I jump into my question, is that a reasonable way to understand how you think about sort of the future of Numeric?
Certainly. It is really about AI as orchestration, and there is just a lot of exceptionally well-tested, exceptionally well-written, good software that needs to exist in accounting, and it is no small task to go build that. But even from a perspective of you have extremely high-quality output for one-off problems, it is objectively inefficient to, on the fly, generate new Python for every individual customer, every user in a workspace to accomplish the same underlying goal when you can have a library of of these things that you've built, that you've tested, that you can prove how it works, and that is absolutely how we think about the composition of different experiences in our product.
So if you were to write the job description of a controller in 5 years, 10 years, let's say, what are the skills that you would expect this person to have?
I'd say someone who is very, very excited to embrace AI tooling. And from that perspective, I mean the ability to think about a problem in a way that you can break down what are some of those building blocks that you need to really address the issue. I think someone who is excited about how they build a team culture and building a team who is willing to try new tools, is willing to make a mistake that they validate before truly handing it off, but is willing to sort of run fast and then reevaluate as some fundamental qualities. I would also say, the controller is very much responsible for the month-end close and how it paces, is very much responsible for how workload is balanced across the team and how they think about that. And so I would say, again, back to someone who is excited to understand how to get the most leverage out of their team, but really know where humans in the loop matter in that process, and how human-empowered accounting or AI-empowered humans are going to be trained.
It sounds as if there is managing any team is managing a complex system. It does sound like this sort of requirement of data orchestration, data engineering, understanding sort of what are the routable tasks in your month-end close process versus what is exception handling, being able to route it to the appropriate channels, checking back with the operating teams to understand what the heck they were actually talking about when they added that extra performance obligation to a revenue contract. It sounds like there is a sort of whole host of either complementary skills or core skills that a controller will need to pick up in order to sort of exist in this new world. Talk to me a bit about how you think about that. Is that a complementary role, sort of a data enablement person who exists in the office of the CFO? Or is that sort of part and parcel with sort of heavy wears the crown of being a controller?
I think I actually really like the phrase data enablement. We do think about that as one of the real problems to go solve, which is you could build out any number of AI native workflows in accounting, but if you haven't solved the fundamental, where are the data pipelines? What data is available? Is it accurate? Is there a single source of truth? You won't be able to actually automate and anything in earnest and solve those real problems. And so, yeah, I do think that increasingly accounting teams will have folks who are technical, who wear an engineering hat in some world, and that's been one of the most delightful surprises as we've been on this journey with Numeric, which is accountants are very systematic thinkers. They really think and speak like engineers. They have a very systems thinking mindset that already the sort of core skills are there. I think especially as AI helps radically improve the ability for someone to learn something new and to employ new technologies, and we will increasingly see very technical accountants who of course they're writing SQL queries, of course they are doing some degree of engineering, building small Python tools, and how they're provided the right canvas to then execute some of those tools, test them, potentially share them, not to be too forward looking on product, but the accounting engineer is a role that I think will exist.
Is there anyone who you are particularly impressed by on the Numeric team, both in terms of their knowledge of technical accounting, but how that is able to be parlayed into original critical thinking on the EPD side of our organization?
Everyone, and truly, it is from the perspective of subject matter experts. Everyone on our team, we hire them in part because we think they would make excellent product managers, and it's a real joy to hear them think through the problems and get excited about better ways of solving them. I think the ability to also empower folks with more of a technical mandate is very exciting. As a quick aside, one of the features of our product is a technical accounting research tool. And Alec, a recent joiner on our team who has a vast technical accounting background, in his first week, set him up in the OpenAI playground, set him up with some framework for building some evals, and the degree of excitement to seeing an output improve, which first started as this insane flowchart of a specific technical accounting workflow that he was deeply familiar with. It's palpable and it's amazing, and it's just a matter of providing the right tools. And in some ways, these things are intuitive to those who really know the craft.
For those who are unfamiliar, what's an eval?
An eval is a way of telling a model what is good and what is not good about an output. And it's done in a format of a feedback loop, effectively, and building a roster of feedback loop examples to align a specific output based on a certain type of input. And in accounting, it's interesting because there are use cases where this is fundamentally valuable and useful, things like technical accounting or research-oriented questions where there's a clear right and wrong, and the types of inputs that you're expecting are relatively consistent.
Sure.
Their language in many ways, especially from a memo standpoint. There are other aspects that are much harder to build quality evals for, where the inputs are so widely variable. Anything related to some of our work on flux analysis, for example, just the vast expanse of different types of numerical inputs that, of course, we're pre-summarizing. We're running different tools to get accurate figures from a mathematical standpoint and then sending to a model to summarize. It's really hard, even if you've built those pipelines and you have some sort of a normalized output that goes into the model, it's really hard to just put together a spreadsheet of what good and bad looks like. And it's where a certain degree of taste in the prompt engineering and some of the fine-tuning comes into play. So a lot of tools in the toolkit to make products like this work.
Yeah, it really does come down to a matter of taste and subjectivity when it comes to evaluating the quality of an output, whether you focused on a superfluous driver or the true driver of what is actually driving the business, which I think is hard for any human to do consistently.
Yeah.
One more question before I jump to a closing question. When you think about this foundational data problem, it sure sounds a lot like system of record software from one technology wave ago. And, since the advent of software as a service, what makes this data challenge either different or the same? And what is the sort of promise on the other side if companies are willing to do the hard things of putting their data in a usable framework for software to begin taking off big chunks of the work that's being done?
Yeah. I think what makes it different is really the moment where we are now, from an ability to integrate with many different systems. In some ways, a problem we've created, right, as systems of record. The needs expanded beyond the sort of initial set of requirements and the bolt-on features of some of these more traditional systems of records. Lots of point solutions are born. Those point solutions, all, of course, on various generations of SaaS as well. But we're at a moment now where the ability to integrate with lots of systems, that just the barrier to entry there has gone down tremendously. At the same time, the burden of what it takes to build software has gone down. I would say it's gotten easier to build software in all sorts of ways, both from the database technology available. That means you can build high availability systems with more ease and speed, and from a pure engineering standpoint, the ability to employ folks who are more product-minded engineers who are excited to work with customers and break down their pain points. These are not entirely new concepts, but they are things that have become more significant and have lowered the relative cost to build really excellent software. So I think that the moment is different now than it was. I think
the moment is different, but the problem it rhymes with the problems that we faced in the past.
Absolutely. And I think what you unlock, you were alluding to probably the biggest element, which is the true automation of a lot of work. And I think that's a fundamentally scary word. I think the idea of even saying that your goal is to fully automate X, Y, or Z workflow, from an accounting standpoint, is immediately conflated with, oh my gosh, there are not going to be jobs. This job is going away. I have a philosophical belief in this, which is so long as there are humans working at a company, you will want humans involved in the finances and the financial operations of that company. We won't get into will there be humans in companies. I think that's an unproductive line of discussion. But, it is interesting to look. You hear even now in the last, call it 9 months, stories of the fear of oh my gosh, companies are downsizing. And there is some of that. There is some of the large scale data analysis work that's getting shipped off to models. There are aspects of work. There are aspects where there's tremendous scale involved in repeat process that does require fewer people.
Sure.
But when you look at headcount growth, how companies are prioritizing, it is universally thought of, from the Fortune 100 to the startup that just raised a seed round, as how can we get more out of the people that we have, and how can we grow more efficiently? Not we want to stop growing. We believe there will be fewer people, and so that there are competing metrics on this. I've seen completely competing reports. I'm in the camp of companies are going to continue to hire people, and those people are going to be more efficient, and it is net a lift on society and GDP, and that's an exciting thing. To get back to your question, I think what we will see is more automation by solving this problem. I think what we'll also see is the ability for a more comprehensive story to be told. And that's another thing I just find so fascinating about accounting, is that it expresses a narrative that is not secondary to the story of a company. It's not secondary at all. It really is. It is the story, and for anything that has some capitalistic bent to it. And the ability to express that narrative in the most comprehensive way is very exciting. I come back to an example of something we've launched where we're explaining a variance in headcount for an employee wages account that is including that headcount data from another system. It's, as more of these pieces come together, you are getting a more complete picture, and that's exciting.
I think that the one thing that I echo your more optimistic, techno-optimist perspective, because when I think about the original definition of a computer, it was someone who was in a room doing arithmetic. When I think about the tool that is, certainly at Numeric, we have a ritual of giving everyone an abacus on their annual anniversaries, and new technology enables new jobs, new types of work to be done, as opposed to just sort of a fixed pie sort of horse trading mindset. But Anthony, I want to thank you so much for the time, being willing to hop on this side of the microphone.
It's a pleasure.
I want to experiment with a recurring closing question.
Okay.
So consider this for the next episode that you're hosting.
All right.
What about your job gives you the most energy?
I can tell you the initial word that came to or phrase that came to my head, and I probably should go with that one rather than pausing and thinking about it.
This is why I did not give you the agenda.
Yeah, no,
before,
this is great. The phrase is the people, and I was debating, is that a contrived statement to make? Of course, one would think the people are it really is, and it is internally and externally. It is energizing to get positive feedback. It is, in the moment, highly demotivating and stressful to get negative feedback, but also ultimately awesome and human, because it is what anyone shows up for every day is to go figure out how they can move the needle for themselves and for others. And both the positive and the negative signals are the only way that you do that. And if you only have one, you can't actually move the needle without feeling like you're pushing it in a lopsided way. But we also, our team is such a phenomenally curious group of people who show up every day excited about what they're working on, show up every day excited to learn something new about the company, about the domain, for those that are subject matter experts, about a domain that is totally new to them and building product. And that is so fun and rewarding to watch. And our customers love what we're doing. And it is absolutely the thing that keeps one going is hearing about someone who got a lot of value that week out of what you're doing. So it's the people. The people are energizing.
All right, Anthony. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Incoming Statements, a production of Numeric. To learn how AI and automation are eliminating the manual burdens holding your accounting team back, visit numeric.io. Join us next time to hear from more top accounting voices on the challenges they're facing and where they see the industry heading.